Hi, this is David with entry number 679, 678, um, here on a very balmy Monday. And I don't, did I, oh, I think I recorded it yesterday, but I actually forgot to. Actually, I know I did because I was on the bridge. I wanted to record today because I wanted to offset the schedule slightly so that I would end up recording on Wednesday. Wednesday is the 16th, which means it is my birthday, or at least one of my two possible birthdays. Anyway, whatever that means. I wanted to record something about. I've been listening to at a voracious level. I've been listening to this podcast by a comedian called Joe Rogan, and Joe he wears a lot of hats, but he's a man of a lot of trivia. And if you know me personally, you know that I enjoy trivia a lot. And one thing that he is particularly interested in the scope of his trivial knowledge, his trivial pursuit, one could say, is the kind of geological, geological kind of fringe science. And fringe science is a huge disservice, and I kind of hesitated to do it because it already kind of primes the listener to kind of disregard it. But I've listened to maybe about 9 hours of his podcasts he does with these scientists, and they are scientists, or at least aggregators of knowledge, and it's very fascinating to hear like all these data be kind of told to you, and kind of graphs and all this stuff, and kind of have this logical statement set before you. And while you're listening to it, it all just clicks and makes sense, and it's very obvious. But we've been conditioned almost to a point where we disregard anything that isn't coming from like a textbook or a professor's mouth or something. And so basically what he says is like essentially that there were these like huge, like I don't know I think it was like 7,500 years ago, 7,500 years ago, there were this huge ice sheath, maybe longer than that actually, but there was this huge ice glacier covering North America and Canada, and at some point during that time there was a comet that hit Earth and melted this ice sheet in a huge amount of time, like huge amount, it's very hard to put into words, but the scientist had spent a great deal of time, I think in where was it? In Oregon or Washington, and he showed this kind of fossilized waterfall that was like, it was like 15 times wider than Niagara Falls, and he said like at Niagara Falls peak like rate, it falls at like something like 250,000 gallons per second. And he said this waterfall at its peak would have been pushing out like millions millions of gallons of water per second. Like, I have the light, by the way, I'm not just running across the road for no reason. And it was like per second, millions of gallons per second, like tens of millions of gallons. And he said this huge like ridge, like waterfall crest was formed in a matter of like over the course of like 2 weeks, and it's crazy. And he's not some kind of guy who says that the Grand Canyon was formed by the Great Flood, but he does acknowledge that there were these floods in ancient times of man, that occurred. The Grand Canyon and Niagara Falls were obviously, he said, like this kind of thing, were obviously carved through time, passage of time, but there are these certain distinct physical, kind of geological evidence things, bodies of land that were carved out and shaped and manipulated through like huge quantities of water coming sweeping through. And what's weird is that it's completely disregarded by modern like geological theory. Like it's like a thing that like you equivocate it to like aliens or like chemtrail people, but really, like you can go out there and see these things. Like the other big one he showed were these like if you ever look at how water kind of when it hits land, it'll kind of create these like ridges and like bumps on the land, on the sand and stuff. And it's like normally you go like, oh yeah, that's but they're usually like a centimeter tall, maybe like 3 inches wide. But he showed these ones that you can go out and like walk on, and they were like these absolutely massive ones that were like tens of feet tall, like many feet wide. And it's like whoever made this thing was like the amount of water that was necessary to create these ripples or whatever was like an outstanding or astounding amount. Like truly like on the level of something like Noah's Ark in the style flood. Like truly like an insane amount of water. But I didn't really speak succinctly, but it's just a fascinating thing to see, like to know actually in the philosophy and the kind of the grand scheme of it, that it is possible that this whole like thing could have occurred, and there is all this kind of physical evidence for it, and yet the geological scientific community of the U.S. and the world really have completely turned a blind eye to it. And what it really speaks to, and this is kind of something I think I've talked about before, is kind of the one of the fallacies, of the handful of fallacies man holds on to. One of the biggest ones is obviously hubris, or inflated ego. And you see this because you could see this evidence, you could at least acknowledge it, but in doing so, it would almost negate so many people's life work, because we have this standing theory for all and explanations for all these things, and if you submit to a new theory, all that work, all that time, all of your own ego that gets wrapped up in research and stuff, it feels like you get like a personal attack. And so what's easier to do is to just deny, and you'll still be ahead. But it's like a very fascinating thing. And they also cited like a Boulder Park. I'm not sure where that is, but I also think it's in Washington. And someone just fell on me. There were all these giant boulders, like literally giant boulders, like tens of feet tall, wide, that are just strewn about in a certain area. And it's like, how is this possible? Like, they didn't come from the ground. They're like not part of the other kind of like shelf of the rocks around there. So like, where do they come from? And this kind of theory is that there was this huge kind of undercurrent underneath the glacier that kind of like, when it melted it had in the glacier were all these boulders and kind of carried them out to this certain kind of flat area and where they settled. And it's just like a very fascinating idea, possible truth that is completely ignored. And I think to bring it back out again, how it kind of asks the question, it begs the question, how many of these kind of things are there in life? If it's possible in one field of study, is it possible in all the other fields? And I would say, yeah, it is. And to acknowledge that, or to even give that credence, is asking a lot of people. And I know it sounds like a little bit, but if you really think about it, it is asking quite a lot of people to kind of even just acknowledge or entertain an idea of this magnitude. Anyway, thanks for watching. This video is too long, I'm sorry. But I thought it was I've been thinking it's very fascinating. I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk with you soon. Bye.